night was thick, a cloak of darkness suffocating any trace of light. Two truckers drove along the deserted highway, the engine's rumble breaking the absolute silence. The radio emitted only static, as if the world itself had stopped communicating. But then, something sliced through the void, a strange silhouette walking ahead, swaying on two legs, its arms unnaturally long for a human. Terror struck like a knife to the gut. A pale, slender figure, faceless, indistinct. They exchanged glances, the air thick and heavy in their chests. "That's not a person," one of them whispered, a chill creeping down his spine. Instinct screamed, "Run." But when they slammed their feet on the accelerator, the wheels spun uselessly. The ground, once firm, had turned into a treacherous mire, as if the road itself was trying to hold them in place. The truck swayed, the engine roared, but it didn't move. The creature advanced, slow, relentless, as if savoring the fear radiating from the cab. The smell of burnt oil and cold sweat mixed in the air. Time stretched unbearably, each second dragging on in an eternity of horror. And then it stopped in front of the headlights. It smiled, or something close to a smile. A dark gash where a face should have been. Panic surged. The driver shut his eyes and began to pray, his voice trembling, words tumbling between faith and pure desperation. His partner followed, knuckles white on the wheel. And then, as if something had broken in the air, the creature let out a howl. Not human, not animal. A deep, vibrating sound that rattled their chests. And in the blink of an eye, it lunged into the darkness, vanishing without a trace. The engine roared back to life. The truck, once stuck, rolled forward as if nothing had happened. Only the distant echo of that inhuman cry remained. The truck moved, but fear clung to the two men's bones. The older driver, Raul, gripped the wheel tightly, his fingers pale from the pressure. His partner, Miguel, kept checking the rearview mirror, expecting the creature to emerge from the shadows again. The asphalt, once treacherous and muddy, was now solid beneath the tires, as if nothing had happened. But they knew. They knew they had seen something they weren't meant to. The horror of being trapped while that thing approached burned fresh in their minds. "That was the devil's work," Miguel muttered, but Raul didn't answer. He just wanted to get the hell out of there. The highway stretched ahead, an endless line of darkness cut by the truck's trembling headlights. Then the engine sputtered. The dashboard flickered erratically, and the radio, previously filled with static, hissed in a way that sounded wrong. Like a whisper. Like words forming within the noise. Dread crawled back, icy and paralyzing. "This isn't right," Raul murmured, trying to ignore the sensation that something was watching them. The truck lost speed. The engine coughed. And then silence. The vehicle died. Completely still. In the middle of nowhere. They exchanged a glance, terror plain in their wide eyes. Outside, the wind had stopped. No sound. No life. Just the empty road and the weight of something unseen closing in around them. Then Miguel noticed it. At the edge of the headlight's reach, a shadow. Small at first, but growing. Moving closer. It was her. Again. Whatever it was, it hadn't left. It had just been waiting. And now it was coming back. The air in the cab thickened, suffocating. Raul twisted the key desperately, but the engine only groaned like something was holding it back. Miguel trembled, eyes locked on the rearview mirror, where the creature grew larger with every passing second, moving with that dreadful, deliberate slowness. Each step stretched time, turning seconds into hours. And then it stopped, just stood there, as if it knew they had no escape. Fear was almost tangible. Raul clenched the wheel until his knuckles turned white. "She's playing with us," Miguel whispered, too afraid to look away. The truck trembled. The lights flickered, and the radio came alive with static. But this time it was worse. The static twisted into sounds, like a voice, distorted, trying to speak. A strange language, or maybe a lament. The creature moved again, faster now. Miguel screamed. Raul, in a last desperate act, clutched the scapular hanging from his neck and began praying, words tumbling from his lips in pure panic. Miguel followed, hands trembling around the rosary his grandmother had given him years ago. "Our Father who art in heaven." Their voices shook, breaths short and ragged. And then, it happened. The creature, which had seemed to feed off their fear, suddenly stopped. Its body twisted unnaturally as if an invisible force held it back. A guttural noise ripped through the air, a howl filled with rage and frustration. Then, in a frenzied movement, it recoiled and shot back into the darkness, vanishing among the shadows. The truck, once dead, jolted violently. The engine roared. The lights steadied. Raul didn't hesitate. He threw it into gear and floored the accelerator. Miguel clung to his seat, eyes still glued to the darkness. But what terrified them wasn't just what they had seen. It was what they had felt. That thing didn't just want to scare them. It wanted something more. The road stretched ahead like an endless tunnel of shadows, but Raoul refused to slow down. The engine roared like a wild beast, tearing through the oppressive silence. Miguel, still pale, kept looking back, expecting to see it reappear. The terror hadn't left. It clung to them like a cold shadow, whispering that this wasn't over. "She fled because we prayed," Miguel muttered, fingers clutching the scapular at his chest. Raoul only nodded. But deep inside he knew it wasn't that simple. And then, it came. First, a whisper. Soft, barely audible, woven into the wind whistling outside. Then, a wail. A sound almost human but carrying something wrong. It was both a sob and a laugh, a sound that made every inch of his body crawl, like nails dragging across glass. Miguel clamped his hands over his ears, eyes shut tight. "Don't listen. Don't listen," he screamed as if he knew something Raoul didn't. But it was too late. The sound grew, wormed into their chests, seeped into their minds like a tide of pure horror. The road twisted ahead, warping like a nightmare. The GPS spun wildly, the compass useless. And then Raoul realized they weren't escaping. They were trapped. The road itself was part of this nightmare, keeping them in place. The wailing turned into a scream, a lament that came from everywhere. But the worst part? The certainty that they were no longer alone. Raoul gritted his teeth and slammed his foot down harder on the gas. He didn't care anymore. He just had to get out. But in the rearview mirror, it was there. Not just one. Many. Twisted figures, emerging from the darkness, stretching long, faceless. Shapes made of pure terror. Miguel saw them first. And he didn't look away. Raoul did. And he regretted it immediately. His eyes caught a single second of the impossible, and that was enough. Enough to know he should never have looked. Enough to know, some nightmares don't let you wake up. And now tell me, have you ever felt like you weren't alone on the road? Ever had the eerie sensation of being watched in the dead of night? If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe, turn on notifications, and share. But be careful. Some things prefer their stories never be told.